Sure.
Hi, this is Tim and my friend Bot, and tonight we're going to discuss the A word. That's right,
Mm.
A for abortion. And I just like you to know before we start that I'm completely out of my mind.
Oh.
I can't control my emotions on this topic. All I can do
Oh.
is yell and scream,
Mm.
throw firebombs, march in the
Wow.
streets, threaten people, show obscene photos, become hysterical, and I'm
Mm.
absolutely incapable of using my logic, my common sense, my mind at all,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a loyal viewer of mass media,
Mm.
and I'm just totally controlled by the medium around me, and that's the way I've been conditioned.
Oh.
So if I say anything that makes any sense at all, it's just an accident, just a little mistake. Okay.
Sounds good.
Um,
Let's move on.
sure. Well, one of the things that came to my mind was, first of all, that I'm a male, and so are
Mm-hmm.
you. And
Mm-hmm.
some people feel that males have no right to discuss this issue
Oh.
because it's not our
Mm.
bodies that are involved, right?
Huh.
Right?
Okay.
Now, last time I was in sex ed class, I was taught that immaculate conception was something that was a religious phenomena. That
Mm.
for a woman to conceive by herself could only be done with the intervention of the Holy Ghost.
Wow.
And unless you're of such a faith, and I certainly respect those that are,
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe that a man's influence is necessary in order for a woman to become pregnant. And
Biologically, that is
mhm,
indeed the case.
right
Yes.
now,
Well, as I
huh?
said before, it takes two to tango.
It does, and unless a lady would like to go to an anonymous sperm bank and maybe pay a fee to be
Mm-hmm.
artificially inseminated by a Nobel Prize winner.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's no guarantee of that, she might actually get defrauded and end up with the junior clinician, or maybe the night watchman. You got to watch it there. They may not be telling the truth about all those Nobel Prize winners, but anyway, the point is that unless you're going to do that, I can't see how the man can be ethically or morally removed from the conception,
Mm.
and it
Good point.
certainly cannot be removed physically.
That's right.
That takes care of that point in my mind, at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, the other thing that's seems to me misunderstood by a lot of people is that
Mm-hmm.
who are getting abortions, who has abortions. Well, you can go to the CDC, which is in the United States, and in here in Canada too. We also rely on the CDC for statistics like this. And
Mm-hmm.
for example, the victims of rape is less than 1/2%. Okay,
Oh,
did you know that? Didn't
no, I did not.
you probably thought, oh, rape victims are maybe 10, 20, maybe even 30% of those people who go for an abortion, right?
Mm.
Wrong,
Right.
wrong. It's less than a
Mm.
half percent. Or how about the baby has serious health issues? Like
Sure.
you did a ultrasound and it had a genetic disorder or maybe a deformity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think that percentage might be? Maybe 10, 15 perhaps of the number of
Um.
abortions. Did you ever think about that? Well, the fact is it's 3%.
Oh, wow.
And then and combine that with other possible health problems,
Mm-hmm.
it could be up to 5%, but some of that is
Mm-hmm.
conjectural
Right.
because they're not sure. They just think there might be a risk of
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
congenital deformity or a health risk or something like that, based on your DNA profile combined with that of your spouse or mate,
Sure.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And then there's other statistics, things like, well, for example, what about the age? Don't you think that
True.
most ladies that have or women who have abortions are maybe young, maybe even children? Isn't don't you think that
Could
would
be.
be the reason why? Well, guess what? Less
Mm-hmm.
than 8% of abortions in 2019
Mm-hmm.
were under age 20.
Oh,
That's a little bit interesting, isn't it? A little bit surprising. And
yes.
only 0.2% are under the age of 15. In other
Oh, wow.
or in other words, non-consensual,
Right.
because it's illegal to give consent for sexual relations if you're under 16 or under 15, depending on the state or the province. So
Correct.
the number of non-consensual pregnancies, like with rape
Mm-hmm.
or with just underage, because you're too
Mm-hmm.
young to give consent,
Mm-hmm.
combined is less than 1%.
Oh, wow.
It's incredibly small.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So who are getting abortions, and what is the main reason? Well, um, in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
almost 90%,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
86%, give or take a couple. Actually, it's probably more like 87% of women who got abortions were unmarried
Mm.
between the ages of 20 and 35.
Oh, wow.
In other words, they're not getting an abortion because they were too old or for a health reason.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting it because of something that happened against their will.
Right.
They're not victims of a crime.
Mm-hmm.
They are simply deciding to abort their fetus,
Right.
and they're. It's not like they don't know how to use birth control. I mean, are
Right.
not adults. They're between the ages of 20 and 35.
Right.
So what is the reason? What's the number one reason? Well, they're unmarried and they don't have the financial resources they feel to raise
Mm-hmm.
that child. They're either
Mm-hmm.
they're unmarried and therefore they don't have a partner to help support the pregnancy,
Mm-hmm.
or they're unemployed and a visible minority and living in poverty,
Right.
or they already have children and additional children would be seen as a burden to them financially. In other words, they can't afford a larger family, and
Indeed.
it's too much stress on them, and so they either already have, like, remember, 90%, almost 90% are unmarried,
Yes.
but they may have children already. They may have a child already. But the point here is that it's any objective observer, without getting emotional about it and without being swayed by horror cases and
Mm-hmm.
criminal things,
Mm-hmm.
can deduce that the number one reason for abortions in America in 2019 was economic.
Yes.
Well, if there's an economic problem, why don't we have an economic solution? Why are we yelling and screaming about all these things with the Supreme Court and the right to this and the right to that? This is an economic problem. This is a social welfare problem. Think to yourself, how many of these women who are deciding to give up their children because they don't feel that they have the wherewithal to raise them financially,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or and the permutations of that situation, in other words, they don't have a steady partner or a supportive partner, or
Sure.
which is economic as well, because if you're impregnated by a man who then runs away or is
Right.
irresponsible, that's the same as an economic problem, isn't it?
That's right.
I mean, men just don't sit around holding your hand. They go out and earn their living, and yours too, and put bread on the table. Otherwise, they're not a man that you're going to be with.
That's right.
Right? If you're a woman that's
That's right.
pregnant. So,
Well, given the ever increasing
uh
living standards in most major cities in North America,
huh, uh huh,
and the fact of the matter is, it's hard to if it becomes increasingly difficult, economically speaking,
uh huh,
for a single parent to raise a family.
yes,
That mounting pressure definitely puts could be a major factor for the mother to decide on the subject of abortion.
Absolutely.
on especially on the terms of unwanted pregnancy.
Yes.
Right.
Another factor that many people are confused about is they think that it's a religious issue.
Oh.
That to abort a fetus may be
Mm-hmm.
the reason for that, or not. In other words, to keep
Mm-hmm.
the fetus, even if you're in a
Mm-hmm.
situation where you're feeling economically unsupported to do so, is a ethical or a religious issue, a matter of faith.
Right.
Well, the last time I looked at a Catholic treatise on this
Mm-hmm.
subject, the Catholic
Mm-hmm.
Church was 100% against abortion,
Right.
except in very rare cases of threatening the life of the mother, etc.
Right.
Right? And Protestants are somewhat more lenient,
That's right.
perhaps completely lenient, and most religions in North America are either Protestant based or Catholic based,
Mm-hmm.
with some Muslims and Hindus here as well.
Right.
Well, guess what? 30% of aborting women are Protestant, and 25% are Catholic.
Mm.
It's not a factor.
That's right.
That's not the reason for their decision.
Mm-hmm.
They're either of no faith, or they're Catholic, or they're Protestant, or they're another religion, or depending on their cultural minority, if they're a minority, but that's nothing to do with it. Again, it's an
Mm-hmm.
economic issue. It might be a religious issue for a small minority, but when we're looking at a
Mm-hmm.
social problem, we can't build the solution on statistically unimportant cases. You see, when you're trying to fix a problem, you don't look at the exceptions. You look at the general rule, the general conditions, because then
Right.
the answers to the social problem is going to help the largest number of people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, absolutely, what we would want to help each and every individual case, no matter how difficult it were. But when you're instituting social decisions, you have to start with the biggest need, the largest group, and the largest group is not aborting their children because of religious issues, because of ethical issues, because of
Right.
political issues. They're doing it
Mm-hmm.
for economic reasons,
You bet.
not even health or legal reasons. That's extremely
That's
small.
right. Yep.
So it's a
So yeah,
matter of
that
money.
is it. That seems to be the case for modern day abortions. Yeah, mainly has to do with the societies and mainly has to do with the economic situations.
Right.
If the situation is dire and the living standards are high,
Yes.
most single parents who barely make ends meet would resort to minimizing the economic burden as much as possible, citing
Absolutely.
that they do not have the supplemental means to support an additional family member.
Absolutely. And of course,
Mhm.
I'm not discounting the fact that bearing a child inside your body and giving birth or deciding not to give birth is an extremely fraught and difficult emotional issue.
Yes.
I'm not discounting that at all. I'm just asking the question: if a
Hmm.
woman who became pregnant,
Hmm.
um, and she didn't do it on with a plan. This is not a
Hmm.
intentional
Hmm.
pregnancy. I mean, obviously,
Hmm.
if there's an abortion involved, this is not a planned pregnancy. Okay,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
if it's an accident or is not unplanned, now if this woman
Hmm.
were offered the financial support, say up to the age of 6, when the child is school aged, would she decide to go through with the pregnancy? In other words, would she change her mind and have the child if she knew that she was being given the sufficient financial supports to raise that child in an emotionally and economically
Hmm.
viable environment?
Hmm. Yeah, if there's some kind of societal support
Right.
financially on those on those mothers,
Yes.
then most likely she would keep the fetus.
I think so. Now, I'm not a woman myself, but I think looking at the statistics, we can come to that conclusion. So then, instead of an emotional issue here, what we have is an economic issue, and also, if you're supporting a mother to go through with her pregnancy, aren't you saving that woman from an emotionally fraught nightmare, maybe involving guilt, going many years into her future?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe involving, in other words, if she's cared for, then the beautiful life that she may decide to keep if she's able will be preserved, and our society won't have to suffer the ignominy of a fights in the streets over this issue.
You bet.
Uh,
100%.
I'll give you an example. We have an organization, and it's just one. It's a private organization called Planned Parenthood in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and it has influence in many other countries, including Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Its budget is $1.6 billion a year.
Mm.
Okay, and it's a private organization that's nonprofit that exists. It gets 90% of its money from donations, both
Right.
both private and government grants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, in 2021, there were 400,000 abortions in the United States
Wow.
for economic reasons.
Mm.
There were a total of 630,000, but I'm using my 80% figure here. That's actually my 86% figure, which is that. Um, no, no, no. It's a little bit less than that. It's about. Mm, yeah, 70 to 80% of abortions are done for economic reasons. So that's
Right.
how I get down from 630,000 to 400,000. We'll say 400,000
Sure.
abortions a year are done for economic reasons. And if those mothers received 500,000 $500 a month for six
Mm-hmm.
years,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the budget of Planned Parenthood for 1 year.
Yep.
So in other words, just for 1 year, that 1.6 billion, if it was distributed at a rate of 500 a month to those
That's right.
400,000 women,
Yep.
that would take care of that child for 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
supplemental to all of the other, both state and local monetary supports that a single mom raising a child gets.
Right.
Not including food stamps, including subsidized
Mm-hmm.
housing, including
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of welfare payments, and I don't know what they are. It depends on where you live and what state you're in. I'm talking about an extra $500 a month. That's all, and
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
only and that's for 6 years. Now, if you took it just for 1 year, and if you
Right.
took a budget nationwide of $1.6 billion and distributed it every year, that comes to
Mm-hmm.
$3,500 a month.
Yep.
Now, $3,500 a month is plenty to raise a child without any problems at all, isn't it? So,
Yep.
so why does we have an organization that has a budget of $1.6 billion that doesn't give, as far as I know, any support to a mom
Mm-hmm.
to support her child?
But
It,
instead, talk them out of it so
instead,
that they
talk
can
them
go
out
for
of
an
it
abortion.
and to get an abortion, which
Right.
does nothing but cause pain, misery, and suffering, compared to the fact that the money that they're spending to talk them out of it could be given to each mom, and it comes to $3,500 a month per year on their budget of 1.6 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm not talking about extra money. The money's there right now. It's just being
Right.
misused.
Yep.
And by the way, Planned Parenthood, this is not an indictment of Planned Parenthood, but
Right.
there are a lot of services that they provide that are already provided by schools,
That's right.
counseling, by medical clinics,
Yep.
by pharmacies. Your pharmacist is supposed to be the first person you should talk to about contraception, isn't it?
Right. Right.
Those are all free services,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of
So there's a whole lot of overlapping services
there is.
provided by Planned Parenthood
Yes.
that's already available
Yeah.
out there.
And where is the
So,
services to help the mother take care of her child if she decides not to abort it? That's my point. My point is, how come the financial resources are not being provided, and then the woman can make her choice. She can make her choice because she's not under duress. She's not under the threat of economic misery if she goes through with that abortion, with that pregnancy, goes through with that child.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's the problem, as I see it. How can a woman make a decision, make a choice, if she's under duress, under economic pressure, because there's not enough support in our society, and there certainly should be, to support a single mom raising a child, or perhaps not even single, but the point is to give her the financial support she needs, because such a large percentage of women who give up their children are doing it for economic reasons and come from a poor financial situations, or not supported by family or by a husband.
That's right. Or even the community.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
isn't every child a wonderful creation from God?
Yes.
Why can't
Yes.
we treat them with more respect and admiration? Why can't we treat the miracle of birth with more, what can I say,
More dignity and
more
respect.
dignity and respect?
Hmm.
Why can't we do that? What's the barrier? There is no barrier. Financially, the money's already being spent. It's just being spent in the wrong direction. Oh, and by the way, it seems to me that there is an industry. Project Veritas has a recording of the
Hmm.
regional manager of a Planned Parenthood organization. I believe it was in California, and on that recording, done surreptitiously, the price of aborted fetal tissues were being discussed for sale.
Hmm. Oh.
They sued Project Veritas, saying that the recording had been done illegally, that it had been
Hmm.
twisted and taken out of context, and blah 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 blah. They lost their case.
Mm.
The recording was verified to be true, which means the Planned Parenthood is actually involved in tax fraud because they're not reporting their income fully.
Right.
So,
Wow, that's explosive.
well, yes, it is. So how come nothing's being done about it, and why are they not being prosecuted for income tax evasion? Because they're profiting. They're supposed to be a nonprofit organization. So, but that doesn't mean you can't. You still have to declare all your profits in order to maintain your nonprofit status,
Correct.
right? So they have a secret revenue stream, selling aborted fetal tissue, which they're not reporting. So that's illegal. So why aren't they being prosecuted for that? I just don't like that. I don't feel it's just.
That is a really, really good question.
Yeah.
Ever wonder there's a possibility that the systems,
Uh huh.
including the politicians, the legal systems, and
Mm-hmm.
the judges and so on, are actually
Yes.
involved or is
Well,
part of the deal,
well, whenever there's
so that
there's dirty
Planned
money.
Parenthood can seek all sorts of shelters from
Yeah.
them,
Well, whenever there's an
from being
illegal.
prosecuted.
Exactly. When there's an illegal revenue stream, it seems to me that it's always possible that could be put into a slush fund in order to finance nefarious activities, or perhaps street protests, or bribery of some sort. And there's always this possibility that dirty money does dirty things
Hmm.
to me. And I'm not saying that they're guilty of anything. I'm just saying
Hmm.
that there is some evidence out there that deserves to be investigated.
You bet.
And if they have a very good explanation for why they were caught on tape organizing the sale of fetal materials, then that's fine. Let's hear it in open court.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And let's
I'm with
hear,
you on that one.
yeah, and let's hear how the government is going to help support uh, uh, women and give them a choice
Yes.
that doesn't involve duress and the threat of economic hardship if they go through with their pregnancies.
Hmm. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that certain Nordic countries, I believe like Sweden or something,
Uh
already
huh.
have a much more well thought out social welfare policies where
Yes.
they actually provides a more a better support towards single parents.
They certainly do.
Hmm.
And we could look at some comparative abortion rates
Hmm.
um, in different countries.
Hmm.
For example, abortion rates by country 2022. Does that sound good?
Hmm. Hmm.
Excuse me. I have to take a little break here and yell and scream and become emotional and lose my mind. I'll kind of mute for a second while I yell and scream. There. I became emotional, and now I'm able to think rationally again, and I'm able to
Right.
actually look at statistics that are compiled by governments and hospitals, and
Certainly.
we can actually look at the abortion rates. Okay,
Yep.
abortion rates are the highest in the world in the United States,
Mm. Wow.
and
Really?
what's another one? Um, well, China.
Oh,
Now, China,
well,
China has a
it,
one-child legal policy requiring abortion,
that's right.
or it did until fairly recently.
It wasn't until about a year and a half ago that the government officials, citing the ever so declining, rapid declining of the aging population, and
Right.
there's not enough newborn kids to uh, supplement the population,
Right.
basically to recharge, to refill the population as the old ones die off.
Yes.
They decide to open up and they decide to throw away the policy imposed in the 1970s about the one-child policy, and now they, as a matter of fact, they encourage young couples to have more than two
And
or even
every
three.
every country has its own reasons and
That's right.
socioeconomic background.
That's
And
right.
China is obviously totally different than the United States. United,
Well, China, historically speaking, because of traditionally it has been for the longest
yes.
time imaginable before the industrialization.
Yes.
It was an agricultural societies where male adults
Yes.
are being cherished and valued more
Yes.
because they can be deployed as farming laborers
Yes.
more so than females.
And there are so
So
many.
because of that,
Yep.
uh, during the government's policy started in the 70s
Mm-hmm.
of a one-child policy, citing that the senior official says that, oh, they are having worries about population explosions, blah, blah, blah. So they decided one-child policies.
Yes.
And because of all the old traditional mindsets and cultures for many hundreds, if not thousands of years,
Yes.
if a couple has been forced because of some legal impositions and
Mm-hmm.
so on. Of course, with penalties if you give birth to more than one, pretty harsh penalties too. I've heard that that may even include jail terms. But anyways, if those couples in China
Yes.
were only given the option of bearing one child, then naturally they would go after having boys than girls
Yes.
because of the traditional mindset. And on top of that, they also carries the family name down the road, down the
Yes.
generations. That's the mentality.
Yes.
Females, on the other hand, will be married off to another family to bear the other family's child, and
Right.
so as not to carry their own family names.
Yes. So
And
there's.
because of such mindset,
Yep.
a lot of abortions happen in China
Mm-hmm.
throughout the past 30, 40, or 50 years since the 70s, because parents
Hmm.
who had accidentally have more than one have a children
Yes.
and determine that it's a non-preferable sex, say for example female
Aha.
girl,
Right.
then most likely they would resort to aborting the kid and retry again until they bear a male hair.
Well, there you go. And that reason of gender
Hmm.
is much less prevalent in economically developed Western countries,
That's
where
right.
there's a lot more equality in the job market, especially, and in society as a whole. Certainly, that equality has been growing in the last 50 years or so. So it's no
Correct.
longer the issue that it used to be here, where it still might be a larger issue in another country, as you mentioned, China.
That's
I
right.
know that Vietnam, for example, has
Hmm.
a quite high abortion rate, one of the highest in
Yep.
the world.
Yep.
For example, you know, USA is 20 per 100,000,
Right.
and Vietnam is 35 per 100,000.
Hmm.
Well, there's a shocking reason for that.
Hmm.
The number of fetal deformities in
Right.
Vietnam requiring abortion, especially in the last 15 years when they've been using ultrasound. Ultrasound is absolutely necessary in Vietnam because the deformity rate is enormous due to the use of Agent Orange during the Vietnam War, which
That's right.
contaminated the cropland with PCPs,
Yep.
and it's in the food chain, and it's
That's right.
certain areas of the country it's impossible to have children,
That's right.
even, and not to mention the fact that if you do have a kid, it might step on a landmine. But we're not talking about landmines today.
Right.
So you know, every country has its serious issues. And
Hmm.
by the way, there's another thing that makes me angry. People are talking about crimes of the past and how certain minority groups or certain peoples should be compensated for the crimes against them. Well, when is the United States going to pay for its damage to the people of Vietnam? I'd like to,
Very good question.
yeah, and
Very good question.
generations of their suffering caused by their contamination of their very country. It's almost as bad as Carthage being sown by salt after
Hmm.
the Peloponnesian War, you know, in ancient Greece. So
Yes.
that's just one little thing I thought to get off my chest there. But
Sure.
but back to the issue at hand. In countries with falling birth rates,
Right.
they're always economically developed nations where they've gone through a phase of agricultural development
That's right.
where maybe 20 or 30% of the people lived in the country and were on the farms, which was Canada, for example, back in late 19th, early 20th century.
Hmm.
I know in Canada today it's less than 4% actually live as farmers
Yes.
in the country. Used to be 16 or even
Hmm.
20 in
Hmm.
certain places. Now, what's the result of that? Well, when you live in a agricultural rural setting, having a large number of sons or daughters or both is an economic advantage.
That's right.
But when you're in a city and forced to live in an apartment where you can hardly swing a cat without hitting the walls, the number of children that you're able to raise is seriously restricted, not to mention the financial and the time constraints because you're both working parents who have to pay for daycare, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to have your 1.2 average children.
That's right.
And that's the pressure of on abortions again. It's economic. You can't afford it. So
Yep.
if we had $3,500 a month for a mother to support her,
Hmm.
she might not decide to have an abortion at all. She might decide that she wants to keep this child, and that should be her choice because it's her free decision legally.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
support that. I'm not against
Hmm.
abortion. I'm just against putting mothers under duress and making it difficult for them to make a proper, ethical, emotionally balanced, lucid decision.
Yes. I agree.
That's all I have to say.
Hmm.
Would you have any
Stop.
closing remarks?
No, no,
Okay.
no. You're right.